Hi guys, so today we're going to do day 2 of our benchmark review, and we're going to talk about key features, both linear and quadratic. But some of these things we could do in the calculator, and some of them are just look at the graph. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do in your review packet is we need to identify the linear key features. So if you look at your review packet, then here at 0, -3, that's our y-intercept. Here at -4, 0 is our x-intercept, and that can also be called a 0. And then down here where we have this triangle, it's because it is showing us the rise and run. So we have a rise of -3 and a run of 4. That's our slope, or our rate of change. Okay. If we look at some of the types of problems you might see, number 1, what is the 0 of f of x equals 8/3 x minus 16? This is a problem that we could type into the calculator because it's asking for the 0. It wants to know when our y is 0, what is the x value. Okay, so we're looking for the x value that would make the y 0. So we're going to put 8x minus 16 in y1, and we'll put 0 in y2. Okay, so and our y equals alpha y equal, to get our fraction, 8/3, and then x minus 16. And in y2, we're putting a 0. Okay, because I have x values over here, I can do the second window and change my independent to ask, so that I'm just looking for just at those specific x values. When I look at my table, it's going to be an empty table. I'm going to type in those x values. So -16, -6, 6, and 16. And remember, I'm looking for, I have a wrong number -6, 6, and 16. I'm looking for where my y equals 0. So if you notice right here, when my x is 6, both of my y's are 0, and that is our answer. Okay. So this is one that we could put into the calculator in y1 and y2. Number 2, we have a situation. The graph below shows the relationship between the number of gallons of fuel remaining in a truck and the number of hours the truck has been driven. And it wants to know what is the x-intercept of the truck and what does it represent. So if you remember, the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, this is not one that we could put in the calculator. This is literally just look at the graph. Okay, so it crosses the x-axis down here at 20. So we're looking for answer choices that are 20, 0. And if we look at the explanations, the x-axis is our time. So we need something that talks about it being 20 hours. Okay. And when we're down here at the x-axis, that means we've completely run out of fuel. We have 0 fuel at all. So the two explanations, G tells us that it's the number of hours before running out of fuel, and J tells us number of hours required to use 1 gallon of fuel. So G is our correct answer. J is trying to describe a slope, but it's actually the wrong slope here. Okay, so let's look at number 3. What is the y-intercept of the line graphed on the grid? Now, you could look at this and try to make a pretty decent educated guess, but just to be sure, because you never know, it might not be exactly what we think it looks like. So what we could do is we could put this into stat edit. So in your calculator, you're going to go to stat, you're going to edit, and you're going to put your x values in y1 in the L1, and you're going to put the y values in L2. Okay? So over here we did L1 and L2 in stat edit. So our -2 and 7 and our 6 and 1. Okay? Once we've done that, we'll go over to stat, and we want to go over to calc. And we want number 4. Number 4 is our linear regression. And we're just going to calculate it. We don't need to do anything with the equation other than find our y-intercept. And since this puts it into slope-intercept form, our A at -0.75 is our slope. Our B at 5.5 is our y-intercept. So that's what's going to go in the griddable up here. And it doesn't matter which, it doesn't matter where you put your 5.5. Just once you start writing it in and bubbling it, don't skip any columns. Okay. All right. Number 4, which graph represents 4x plus 5 equals 20? Excuse me, 4x plus 5y equals 20. In its current format, we cannot put this in the calculator, because in order for us to put it in the calculator, it has to be y equals. Okay. There's a couple of things we could do. One is if we want to find our y-intercept, we'll take the 20 and divide it by 5. Okay. And that gives us a y-intercept at 0, 4. Okay. So I have a 0, 4 here, and I have a 0, 4 here. Okay. I can get rid of B and C. Now I have to decide between these two. Okay. In order to get my slope, I have to move my 4x across and then divide by 5. Or I could find my x-intercept by taking the 20 and dividing it by 4. When I divide the 20 by 4, I get 5, 0 as my x-intercept. And that's D over here. Okay. So at this point, I want you to take 5 minutes, pause the video, take 5 minutes, and find questions in the test packet that go along with these linear key feature questions. Okay. These are all asked fairly differently, but you'll see a lot of them, they're very similar to what we've already talked about. I have 8 of them that I've chosen for us to use on this one. Okay. And one of them we've talked about before. Okay. Pause the video for a few minutes. Find those 8 problems that you think we could use as part of key features. And once you've found those, about 5 minutes, unpause the video, and then we'll review those numbers. Okay, you should have paused the video and you should be coming back from that now. Okay, you should have taken a few minutes to look for questions in the test booklet that would match linear key features. Okay. So number 1 in the test booklet, you're identifying the rate of change. That's a slope. Okay. So number 1 is one of them that you wanted to look for. Okay. The next one, if we look at number 5, this is which function represents the same relationship. We talked about this one a little bit. In a couple of my classes, we talked about this one on Friday, that you could type the equations into your y equals and look at the table for certain points, like -11, 51, -2, 15, and 3, -5, to see if those are right. You could put the table into your stat edit. You could put your x into L1 and your y into L2 and do your linear regression for this. And that would tell you which equation is correct. Okay? The next one that we could look at is number 14. Okay? Number 14, what is the y-intercept of the line graphed on the grid? So again, this is one that you want to put in stat edit, especially if they give you points, because it's possible that the y-intercept is not a nice decimal. It's not 5.5 or like the other one was. So always double check, put it in stat edit with your 2 points. Again, your x's go in L1, your y's go in L2. The next one we're going to look at is number 19. Okay. 19, it tells you is a linear function, and it wants to know the rate of change. This is, again, one you could put into stat edit, and the a value it gives you is going to be your rate of change or your slope. Okay. Now, you notice when we did our stat edit on our practice problem, it was a decimal. In the test booklet, it's a fraction. So you might have to convert those fractions to decimals to help you decide exactly which one's the correct answer. The next one we want to look at is 28. And number 28 is going to be another stat edit problem. If you look at 28, what's the slope of the line that passes through the points? Put the points into your stat edit. Again, you're looking at the a value because that's your slope. All right, the next one we want to look at is number 30. On number 30, that's a domain and range question. Now, we didn't have a lot of those in our practice packet, but domain and range is a key feature of our linears and our quadratics. Again, think about whether we've talked about domain and range before. Think about whether you're measuring something and it's continuous and would use the inequalities, or if you're counting something, so you're going to list out the values. Okay. The next one we want to look at is number 30. Oh, wrong page. Number 30. I guess, you know what, guys? I skipped 28. 28 is a slope. 30 is the domain and range. I apologize. Okay. But the next one after 30 is number 42. Okay. Number 42 is one like we just talked about, where it asks, well, similar to one we just talked about, where it asks which line shows a slope of -5. Okay. Sorry, it shows an x-intercept of -5. I can read, I promise. The x-intercept at -5 is going to be where it crosses the x-axis at -5. And the last question we're going to look at for these types of questions is number 44. Number 44 again asks about the range of the function. So which y values apply to this function? Okay. All right. If we go back to our, let's go back to our day 2 packet. Okay. And now let's talk about some quadratic key features. Okay. Quadratic key features, we start with our vertex. Our vertex is where it changes direction. So if it's at the top, it's a maximum. If it's at the bottom, it's a minimum. We still have our y-intercept where it crosses the y-axis, and we've got our x-intercepts, or 0, where it crosses the x-axis. And down the middle through our vertex is our axis of symmetry. Okay. When we ask about quadratic key features, okay, the first question, and there is a typo on this question, just block out the answer choices because the answer choices don't really go with the question. Okay. An architecture student is drawing a graph of an arch as shown below, and the arch has the shape of a parabola, which begins at the origin and has a vertex at 4.6, 12.2. So here's our vertex. And through this vertex is our axis of symmetry. Okay. Our axis of symmetry is at 4.6. Okay. If you recall, we've talked about the axis of symmetry is called that because everything around it is symmetric. Everything around it, all the points on each side are going to be the same distance from the axis of symmetry to the parabola. So from our first x-intercept to our parabola, it is a distance of 4.6. Okay. So from our parabola, or from our axis of symmetry to our next x-intercept, if I could get things to stay on the screen, will be another 4.6. So if I add 4.6 plus 4.6, I'm going to get 9.2. So my other point is going to be at 9.2. Okay, when x equals 9.2. Okay. Number 2, the graph models A, the area in square feet of a rectangular porch with a length that is 0.56 W less than 28 feet when given a width of W feet. You don't have to write an equation. The question actually asks, based on the graph, what is the width in feet of the porch with the greatest area? You just have to look at the graph. So if you look at the graph, you're looking for what is the width with the greatest area. Okay. So I'm looking at my vertex point. My largest area is right here, but it's actually asking about the width. So the width is 25 feet. Okay. Questions like this get missed because people aren't paying attention to what it's asking for. It's asking for the width at the greatest area, but a lot of times people are going to end up choosing the area and not the width because they're not reading the question. So make sure you're slowing down and you're reading the question. Okay. And our last example that we're going to look at with this, we have the graph of a quadratic function shown on the grid, and what's to know was the equation of the axis of symmetry. If you recall, the axis of symmetry goes through our vertex, and here's our vertex. Our axis of symmetry goes right through here at this line, and we have a line at x equals -1. So J. F and G are automatically wrong because they say y equals. All of our axis of symmetry will come from x. Okay. At this time, pause the video, look through your packet, your test pack, and see if you can find the 4 quadratic key feature questions. Okay, there are 4 of them. So pause the video for a couple of minutes, look for those 4 quadratic key feature questions, and then come back to the video and see if you got them right. Okay, guys, you should have paused the video to take a look and see if you could find the 4 quadratic key feature questions. The first one that you should have been able to find would be number 12. Number 12 is a domain and range question. Okay. And again, the range, we have a table. In order to find our range from this, we start by finding our vertex, which in this case is at -2. And then we look to see if the numbers are going up or down. Okay. So number 12 is one of them. Number 25 is next. And number 25 gives us the graph of a parabola. And it wants to know about the relationship between the graph of f, this parabola, and the graph of 3/2 x squared. You could type this in the calculator. This is one that you could put in y1 and y2 and look at the graph. Okay, you don't have to graph it yourself. Okay, but this is a transformation question. It's still a key feature. What happens to that quadratic when we put the 3/2 times x squared? Okay, the next one we want to look at is 34. 34 wants to know what is the minimum value of g. What is the y value for the vertex? Okay, so when we find our vertex down here, what is that y value? That would be the minimum. And the last question that goes with this section of questions is number 45. This is again one where we're given a graph and it says, what are the zeros of f? It's asking for your x-intercepts. So where does it cross the x-axis? Okay. Just a reminder, your benchmark is tomorrow, Tuesday, March 3rd. And you want to go through your benchmark in 3 passes. Okay. So when you're going through your benchmark, you want to go through in 3 passes. And the first pass you want to do is find all those easy questions. All the questions that you could put in y1 and y2, look at a table, look at the graph, anything that you can put in the calculator and get the answer just using y1 and y2, or any kind of easy question. Okay, if it's just it's just asking you to, which of these tables is a function of f of x, okay, or a function of y given x. Do the easy questions first. Do not do the test in order. Find the easy questions first. Second set of questions that you want to go through are ones like we looked for today, those key features. Anything where you have to do stat edit. Anything that you might need to read a graph, okay? Those are the kinds of things that you want to do on that second pass. And on the last pass, anything that's left. whatever questions you've not answered yet, go through and answer them on that third and last pass. Okay. This way, hopefully, you have a better chance of getting all the easy questions right. You'll have a better chance of, if you have a majority of questions that are calculator type problems, and you get those done first, you have a better chance of passing if you get, those done. I don't want you to miss a question just because you couldn't get to it, especially if it's an easy question that you could have just typed in the calculator. Okay. All right, guys, I will see y'all tomorrow. Have a great day and be good.